Thank you for tuning in to, I believe, what is now episode 5 of the Aldoa Edge. It's come along quite a bit already. And as usual, I'll give an extra 15, 20 seconds to folks who are flowing in. But I'm really happy to get some people showing up to these webinars. I'm glad that you're finding some value out of it. And today, as we sort of said in some of the marketing emails we sent around, today we're going to be focused on a very specific subset of the engineering world that we've been spending a lot of time on internally because we think the work is pretty important and interesting. And that's the geotechnical and construction materials testing side of things, right? And obviously, a lot of listeners and watchers are civil engineers already, environmental consultants, what may be. But for anyone who's listening from the outside, because I know we do have some folks from, the database providers who tend to join, these geotechnical and construction materials testing firms are really responsible for working with earth materials, soils, rock mechanics. We have geologists, hydrologists, folks who are working with concrete and aggregates and foundations to basically ensure the structural integrity of developments, right? And that's why this work is so important. Not only are geotechnical firms and CMT firms, like I mentioned, ensuring the structural integrity of developments, they're also critical for identifying potential problems early on before they lead to expensive repairs or even worse, safety hazards. This niche can be a real bottleneck for larger sort of civil projects too. I mean, we've heard from so many of our customers, or sort of like GCs or civil firms that are ordering the wrong services, right? Thinking it was what they needed from a geotech or a CMT company. So I do think this industry deserves a bit of spotlight. And because this industry utilizes field testing and laboratory testing, it is a perfect example of a sub-industry that could greatly benefit from purpose-built field data collection software. So if we think about what the sort of status quo today is, right? And I'm going to try to make this sort of a quicker session of just diving into these specifics. And if anyone is listening to this and is a geotechnical firm, or I know there's a lot of sort of multidisciplinary engineering firms that have a geotechnical arm, you might have an environmental arm, a structural, a civil arm, right? If you want to learn more about what we're building to specifically help with geotechnical firms and construction materials testing firms, please reach out. You can email me at adam@aldoa.com, or the better way to get in touch with us is just going to our website at www.aldoa.com. But just to sort of hone in a little bit on what the status quo is today for these firms, right? You're in the field, you might have a lab as well, and you're performing a lot of different tests. And some of the more ubiquitous common tests that we hear from our customers are, on the concrete and aggregate sampling side of things, right? You have the soil science, so soil density, consolidation, and compression testing. We have site characterization studies, defining Atterberg limits, gradation reports, standard penetration tests, right? And some of these studies do require specialized instruments that produce their own readings. While some of them produce observations and data, like, the end value of an SPT that you can just record on paper. And we hear a lot of firms who are simply using pen and paper or a notes app on a smartphone, or, we hear some more people getting into tablets and having like that tablet on site with Microsoft Word to record this data, right? And given that I want to talk about a little bit about the status quo today, and this will tie in with some of the other things we've talked about on, repetitive tasks and manual entry, the companies who we speak to and the engineers and the techs who are doing things on pen and paper, they're sort of having to repeat their work 2 or 3 times. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing some testing in the fields that doesn't require sort of a specialized reading or a specialized instrument that records that. So you're using pen and paper to record your data. Sometimes you go back to the office, you are not just transcribing that data once into sort of the final deliverable for your client, but twice, because you have to put it into Excel to create charts. So if you're doing like a, cone penetration testing or proctor compaction testing, and you have to create charts that your clients want to see, we hear of engineers and techs who are transcribing that data basically up to 2 or 3 times into different calculation systems and Word, Excel, maybe a specialized software back at the office, right? If you have a lab, sometimes your lab needs to be privy to what's going on as well. Uh, and to make things worse, then when you have these charts, you have to take screenshots of them and manually put them back into the final report. Now, obviously, I think this is sort of an extreme case. I know that we have some customers who we work with who use some specialized solutions. I won't call out names because I know that some of these softwares are actually sunsetting. We've heard, I'm sure those in the geotechnical world know what I'm talking about, but we have, yes, some solutions that are going out of business or just choosing not to service this market anymore. And here at Aldoa, we view that as just crazy because the importance of this work is undeniable, and you deserve better software that's purpose built for the sort of services and reports that you're working with. So, what we're doing here at Aldoa, which I think a lot of you will find interesting, and I see on the call we have some of the folks who we've actually been working with on building this out, right? But we're actually working with a ton of I'd say different slices of the market. So we have some firms in the geotechnical space. We have some firms who are strictly in the construction materials testing space who are focused on, concrete and asphalt for the most part. We have some firms in the environmental space, right, who are more focused on groundwater sampling in different areas of concern on a site, and not just sort of pushing that to a lab, but doing sort of work internally on the data they're collecting. So we have a bunch of different folks who we're working with in these sub slices of the market who are sort of teaching us and instructing us on exactly what they do. And, I rattled off the names of a lot of these sort of reports that I think only really geotechnical or civil engineers would know about, right? When we're talking about defining Atterberg limits or gradation reports or SPT testing. And we're really lucky to have sort of or our ears are open to the consultants, engineers, geotechnical field techs who are teaching us about how these reports work in the field and exactly what they do to process that data and create final reports for their clients, right? So internally right now, and one of the things we're really excited to release soon, we have sort of our first iteration of this product that we're getting some beta feedback on right now. But we're really excited to release what we're calling the field data collection software specifically for these geotechnical construction materials testing firms. We also are working on the environmental side of things, but just to keep this webinar a bit more concise, we're working with a bunch of geotechnical companies who, again, are teaching us how they are doing concrete and aggregate sampling, how they are performing these site characterization studies, what data they're collecting, and the best ways for us to allow these firms to have what starts with a form in the field that they can template, and their field technicians can very easily use drop downs to identify what data they're collecting. Not everything can be drop downs. I know you have numerical values as well. And so having these sort of fully customizable forms where you can collect data in the field and automatically push that data back into the office, right? You don't need to wait until your field crew is done and maybe they're in the field for 2 weeks straight and you can't get them to have that time to transcribe that field notebook back at the office. All of that work sort of pushes back into the office instantaneously. So that's sort of one piece of it. The other piece that we're excited about is starting to build out some of these charts, right? So I mentioned sort of the cone penetration testing or proctor compaction charts. We're actually starting to use and it's, again, this isn't rocket science. These are sort of fairly simplistic calculations. Some of them have some of them have some hair to it. But using the data we're collecting in the field and using AI to automatically generate those charts so you don't have to transcribe that data 3 different times. You don't have to put it into Word for the final report. You don't have to send it to your lab, and you don't have to put it in Excel to create those final charts. Doing it all in one integrated workflow is something that will save these businesses a ton of time, and we are really excited to continue working on that. I will say, I've been mostly talking about geotechnical and CMT firms. The environmental market has a lot of similarities here, right? I know oftentimes CMT companies, they have their own lab, they are a lab in-house. When we go more into the environmental world, those are outsourced labs. I don't know of many environmental companies who have the specialized equipment to test, parts per million contamination, right? But a lot of these sort of core principles of collecting data in the field, instantaneously pushing that data back into the office in a very clear aggregation layer back at the office. So you don't have to, track down different files and different reports, and doing simple calculations from that data is very apparent and very true for the environmental market as well. So again, these are markets that I would say have traditionally been neglected from innovation in modern software. And again, we are a software company. We've received some investment from some firms and some investors who are really passionate about, supporting the backbone of this nation's infrastructure and our GDP. But again, even our investors say a lot of these innovative companies would prefer to build strictly for construction firms, right? Try and go after the biggest piece of pie available. And we just fundamentally disagree with that approach. We think that these markets are the critical backbone, like I said, of development projects and sort of the building of our nation's infrastructure, our housing, commercial spaces. And without these geotechnical construction materials testing firms, environmental consultants and engineers, structural engineers, none of this work gets done in the first place. So we are really excited to support this industry. So yeah, I'm going to keep this one really short and sweet. If anyone is interested in learning more about this integrated workflow that we're building to, again, collect data in the field, streamline the data sort of transport back into the office, and also sort of automate using some very simplistic AI models that we're building, the actual production and formatting of the final charts that you're using from these reports, please reach out to us. Go to aldoa.com, aldoa.com, and you can request a demo and talk to our team. And we're also looking for design partners, right? Yes, we are a software company. We are selling software, but we have a really interesting opportunity right now for companies in this space who know that their teams can be more efficient, right? And really just want to see what is out there on the market. We are very willing to sort of work with companies in this space to really build custom-built solutions that work perfectly for your firm. And that is an opportunity that I don't think many software companies can talk about. So again, this was Adam Loewentheil for our, I believe, 5th episode of the Aldoa Edge. Stay tuned for more. I know that this was very focused on the geotech and the CMT side of things. We'll do another session down the road on purely environmental, purely civil, structural. We know a lot of surveying companies could use solutions like this as well. We do want to have a whole section on how we're sort of embedding geo-first data into our software, which is very important for not just the industries I've talked about right now, but survey companies, land development companies as well. Stay tuned, and yeah, looking forward to hearing from anyone who's interested in learning more.